Start AI companion.
All right, Brad Ray will get the meeting started. Roll call, please.
Uh, yeah, no, sorry. Just where to start? Hi, Gary Martig, Pat Kenny,
Oh, good for you.
Paul Wilhelm, Lisa Radke, George, Charlie here, and Brad, you're here.
Yep.
And Dan's here.
I'm on the phone, Liz Franick.
And Liz is here.
I think we have a full committee today. Wow.
Okay.
I'm trying to pull up the agenda so I know what's next on the agenda. Somebody have a paper copy I can use real quick while this is,
Here, I'll just push.
or put it up.
I'm trying to figure out how to get the AI.
Oh, it's not on yet.
That's okay. I mean, well, I'll take notes otherwise. And we got the recording.
All right, there we go. First on the agenda then is approval of the agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Wilhelm will make a motion to approve the agenda with the following little correction. They've still got George Bussey down as chair and Bradley Ray down as vice chair.
I think it should be that way, but is there a second?
I'll say seconds the motion along with the corrections.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Public comment. Anybody in the room for public comment? Perfect. Anybody online for public comments? Okay. Go to approval of minutes from the March 3rd meeting.
Moves to approve.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Charlie seconds. Motion is second to approve the minutes as written. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Minutes are approved. So moving to 5, let's make the timeline part of this first A as our community outreach agenda item. I think that works, right? And then we can bring Sheldon on. But can you be on a microphone so we make sure we get?
Just gonna hand out a.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to get in front of you on just in terms of the timeline. So I don't know where we're at for completion of the comp plan update. We're in the process for a number of months already, and I don't want to say we're behind, but we need to accelerate to make sure that we get to a point where we can have the project adopted by county board and to satisfy and meet the planning grant requirements that the Department of Administration identified. So I'm just going to go backwards on the handout that we have for you. I'm not sure if that's the timeline that you have on the screen or not, but okay. All right, good. So the handout that I provided to you is just kind of a summary that Emily Nelson and I prepared, Emily Marshall and I, but just kind of like where we are in time frame. So if you look to the bottom of the page for plan adoption process, You know, we estimate that plan adoption process is going to be about 3 months. It's really not a lot of work on your behalf necessarily, but it's more on just procedures. Adoption of the plan sometime in probably January. There has to be a county public hearing on the comp plan and the ordinance that you'll be adopting in January or November. Sometimes the counties will do the public hearing and they'll approve the ordinance adoption the same time, the same day. But I would suggest that you at least have the public hearing the month before in case there's more or additional public comments that are made from the community. So if you were to have a meeting if you were to actually consider adoption of the ordinance in January, I believe you don't have a county board meeting technically scheduled or usually in December. That means you're looking at November for the public hearing and the process that way. I know that's the same time as budget, and a lot of times counties don't do much. I don't want to say much. There's not a lot of actionable items in November because you're dealing with budget and other things for that. So you're looking at having the public, having the plan kind of wrapped up in September, October. Got to have a class 1 notice. So you're looking at a 30-day notice. You may have a public hearing in 2 different locations in the county, perhaps. Again, I'm not here to talk about what details they are. That's more with Emily and Autumn. But you might have 2 public hearings if you so choose. You could have as many as you want to, but you're only required to have 1. And it does have to be published 30 days in advance. So all of those are just timeframe consistencies to be aware of. So January, December, November, you know, you're looking to have this plan pretty much wrapped up in final draft in the fall, say October-ish. So if you go up to what do we have left for months? You know, just assume we're done with March. We've got April through September-ish to wrap up the visioning, the land use map, all the narratives, public outreach, public informational meeting or meetings, all to kind of flow into as it relates to that process. So just wanted to make you aware of where we're at for the process. So I know that in April, you'll be working on that visioning, the goals and objectives portions of it for that. May, again, approximately May-ish. There's more work on the implementation for actions in your objectives and goals. Your goals and objectives is not going to be one meeting. At least I don't think it will be. You know, so you can almost anticipate that carrying over from April into May as well. The land use maps, whether or not when our staff advises and kind of helps you in the land use map, that's a process that you have to decide. We can't. We'll guide you and provide some information, but you have to identify what parcels are or properties or areas are going to be under the future land use categories. You could just use the map that you have right now and say, yep, that looks pretty close and we're going to be good with that. You might want to bring in zoning. You might want to bring in land conservation. You might want to bring in other departments to kind of guide you in that process or have them provide you a map, what it looks like from their perspective, their professional perspectives for the departments that they manage and work in. So you might want to bring them into it as well. Obviously, those future land use maps that you develop and recommend within the future within the plan are draft. Public can review that. Public can comment on it. You can listen to their considerations or comments that they have for that piece of it. But that will be an intensive piece as well. Then in July or August, the plan should relatively be in a consistent first draft phase. The public open house that you have in August or September, again, the plan only needs to be draft. The final plan isn't final until we're adopted. Now, on the agenda that you had previously for this meeting, it had adoption, I believe, of some of the elements. It's not necessary to adopt the elements today, next month, or the next month. They're just draft. So I want to make sure that we're my staff understands that, they're still working on draft plans. And at least in my conversations with Emily a little bit, the way it looks like to me, is that, Ray is working on the housing chapter. I hope Ray's not working on the chapter all by himself and doing all the narrative development and everything else. That's what we're there for. And any feedback you have in those chapters is great, but that's kind of why you hired us, right? You brought us on board to start writing and drafting those narratives. Not to have been done 2 months ago, but to draft them out so that when we get to the final draft state, they're there and you guys can comment on them as they're being drafted. So I just want to make sure that that's my understanding, is that, we're not expecting you to draft and write and sit behind your desk at home, and you've got work in this job to do that. That's what we're here for. So we'll continue to do that. And I just wanted to confirm that that was kind of where we're going with those narratives, right? Or are you all drafting them and doing all of it yourself?
Nope, I think that's where we
Okay.
are, and I know I have looked at those plan elements that are in the SharePoint. There's a Word document version of them, no, there wasn't a Word document on that. This is the one on their website. You can go look and you can type up notes. I sent some notes to Emily. Emily already got back and addressed some of the comments I had on it. So hopefully we're all doing that a little bit on our time, is to look at what's already there, provide some input. And like was mentioned, is hopefully we're not a committee of one, but yet those were my personal comments on the housing anyway. So right now it is a committee of
Okay,
one, but
okay.
we're
But yeah, I just
But-
want to make sure that you all are aware that, that's what we're doing. That's what we plan to do, is to work on all of those chapters and move forward with them so that we're there.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not sure we have a constituted committee between now and the beginning of June. Dan?
Well, yeah, I'll address that. I'm assuming everybody, including Pat, wants to be back on this committee, considering it's only another 6 months of work.
that's it.
Well, yeah, I know, I'm talking to him, trying to talk him into it. But we'll make the appointments for this committee at reorg. So we had the committee continue to go. Otherwise, we're wasting 2 months here, and can't really afford to do that. The other thing is for the public hearing Sheldon was talking about. Because of how our board meetings work, we're gonna have to do that on October 27th, which is the same day as Budget Day. Because the following week is elections. And this board room is gonna be taken up with the election stuff. Well, for canvassing and everything. So, and also our board meeting in November would fall during Thanksgiving week. And the December meeting would fall during Christmas week. So we really need to do the public hearing in October. And then we can always have a special board meeting if we need to, but our normally scheduled ones are during Thanksgiving and Christmas weeks. So I'm not sure. People are gonna be out deer hunting during Thanksgiving week, and
Yeah, I don't want to pull anybody from a deer stand
Yeah.
to have a meeting, right? So knowing that it's gonna the public hearing would have to be in October, now we're talking advertisement for the hearing in September, which typically the near final draft would be done and available to the public, at the time of the release of the public notice. So I'll have to go back and talk to Emily and make sure that our schedule aligns for that, for all the work that we have to do and you all have to do for the visions or for the issues ops and everything else.
And I think if we are, come June, July, we see that there's no way, we can always schedule a first week of December board meeting. That's not on the regular schedule. It's 6 months ahead of time. It shouldn't be that big of a deal to get that on people's calendars if we have to wait until that late November, early December timeframe to get it done. Go ahead, George.
Given that we have almost de minimis public participation showing up or any public comment almost ever, except exceptionally, can we piggyback this public hearing on top of a county board meeting, or would that not work?
yeah, no, it would happen at a county board meeting. just like we did yesterday. We had a public hearing. It would be the same thing.
Yeah, that's typically what we see from our units of governments, is of doing it during their regularly scheduled county board or city council meeting at that process. Yep. And you might, public participation is what it is. You're affording the opportunity for it. Can't guarantee you that you're going to get a handful or more people, but depending on the plan or their review of the plan or what interest they have in civics, will really dictate what you have for participation in it. So really that's why I'm here today, is just kind of say, you know, here we are here today, March 25th. If we're looking at an October publication, the hearing in October, right? Is that what you said? The hearing in October
Yeah, October 27th.
27th. We'll back that 30 days out. Your resolution that you'll have to do to the county board to set the public hearing in September for October, you know, just kind of the procedural steps like that. But the narrative, we're going to start working on the narrative, not that we haven't, but the narrative portion of it will continue to streamline and go. It's going to be draft as it relates to the narrative until it's actually adopted. So don't expect, or do expect, potential changes to the narrative even after the draft's released to the public, and all the way up to and at the day of perhaps the public hearing of adoption at the county board level.
And just to clarify too, because of the timing of the newspaper, we'd have to get it, is it 10 days before their edition? So it's
It would really
September
be the-
24th, so it'd be like basically September 15th is when we have to have the notice ready to go
Yeah.
to the newspaper.
Yeah, I'll get the exact date from Heather, but
And I know that, you know, you typically meet once a month, if necessary. Are you able to meet more than once a month? For
yes, we are.
this?
Yeah.
I am. But I'm retired.
I-
Truly retired.
I may or may not be. We met twice this month, right? March 3rd and March 25th. That's twice in a month, but
And I'm done. So I just wanted to, you know, always, if you're working with Emily and Autumn, so if you've got any questions for them, keep pumping them with questions. I get updates every now and then in the office about what's happening in all of our communities that we're doing comp plans with. So if there's something more technical or something going on, my email and phone number are always available for you guys to reach out to me too as well. And there's nothing going on. I just wanted to make sure you're aware of that too.
so go ahead, Pat.
Getting myself into everything I get myself into is nobody's fault but my own. But this last year, I've been on 5 committees plus all but the last meeting of farmland preservation, where I chose to not stay with that. So I'm pretty committed to not being as busy in the coming year as I was in the last year, because the farm I grew up on, I got more that I'd like to do and want to do, need to do than I get time for. So I'm pretty committed to being less busy. You're going to talk me into being overcommitted again. But on the ones that I have my name on, ag, forestry, and natural resources, I really thought in the last 12 months we were going to delve deeper into those topics, which was why I agreed to be on this. But here's my question to you. So the farmland preservation plan is done and approved. Charlie was on that. We spent, I think, at most 5 minutes kind of talking about those goals and objectives when we went through and updated that. Is this what we want? Do we want to change anything? And Mary Jo at first was a little reluctant to, how do we deal with this? Because, you know, this plan and that one are, you know, so close, and when they land, one, it would be kind of nice if we spread the time between them out a little bit, which would mean one would have to get done sooner than it would otherwise have to, just to give us a gap. But I told Mary Jo, I said, well, Charlie and I are both on the comp plan committee, and if this passes a farmland preservation committee, most likely it's going to get passed by the comp plan committee. And then I don't think the board, if they read the comp plan, is going to ask for any changes if it got through those 2 committees. So in the farmland preservation, given that's done, and I'm pretty committed to not being so tied down, is there any reason that the staff can't look at the farmland preservation plan and saying, okay, that was just done, it's fresh. As far as goals and objectives, Charlie and I were in agreement on what's in there. Is just to draw from that, because if I ask myself this question, who am I as an individual to say something should be different than what's in that farmland preservation plan at this point, where I don't have public input, I don't have others other than Alyssa. Yeah, we're like 15, 16 months ago when we had those meetings related to ag, which were really good. And what do we do with that? That's going to be after this plan is done, and then start delving into some of the topics from that discussion, I think. I don't know that they're going to land in this the way. When I read this section, I don't know how we're going to say, how are we going to take a particular topic and do something with it? I just am not optimistic that it's going to land in this framework. But since this is a standing committee, once this plan is approved, then we could come back to that and say, okay, what do we want to pick on, focus on and work on, pick some things up. Then I think that would be the time to do it. Because before then, I don't know that we're going to do anything with it anyway, except maybe put a few sentences into this. But if you're going to be here, you're welcome to try to work that into those sections. But practically speaking, we're just, that farmland preservation plan is done. That would have been a good place to put some of the stuff from the meetings that Alyssa organized and I attended on Zoom prior to the comp plan starting. And maybe you could weave some in yet, but then the forestry plan, we approved that 2 years ago, 3 years ago at the most. That one is towards 90 pages or so, I believe. So that's approved by the county too. And again, lots of content and goals and objective there. It's what approved. So again, who am I as an individual to say we should do something other than a plan that's been approved? So to me, because most of those plans are fairly recent, farmland preservation, still hot off the press, forestry almost for practical purposes hot off the press. Why not draw from that? Because those documents are long and recent and extensive, and just summarize from them. And I don't know what else is worth the time or effort, or would even be more representative of what we in Ashland County would want. How do we pull enough people together to get a group that would give input, where it's not just a couple of people and what they think is important, but there's broader groups to put these plans together. So I'd be hard pressed to make the case that one or two people should change what's in those documents. I think staff should just draw on them and we get through the process. And then as a standing committee afterwards, like forestry, there's things related to climate change I'd like to talk about and see what we could do. But no reason we can't do that after this is approved.
Yeah, no, I would highly recommend if you have county departmental plans that have been approved or recently approved, as you've described, they all should roll into, or at least maybe not all, but the appropriate component parts should roll into the comp plan without a doubt. We're not asking, or maybe I inferred, but I'm not saying that you should recreate a whole new set of goals and objectives for each chapter, even though you've got plans that you've recently adopted that fit within the context of the comp plan. Definitely you want to use those adopted or recently adopted plan recommendations and goals. Now, it's not for me or my staff to say, well, we're going to take this one and this one, but that's what you all should be looking at, is what are the plans that you referenced, to say that we're going to put this in the agricultural chapter, or we're going to put this in the environmental chapter because it fits within the context of that from the ag management plan or the forestry plan or some other plan that's been completed for the community. So yeah, I mean, those are the things that we need you to highlight, to say when you start your goals and objective processes, what's already been done, what can you just pull from and put it in there. The goals that were listed previously were from 10 years ago, I presume, 2016. So, some of those aren't applicable anymore, and you need to either delete them, change them, update them. But yeah, pull from everything that's current and existing, makes it a much more relevant plan, and it makes it more consistent with the comp plan, more consistent with the activities and directions that your departments are working in. So you definitely want to do that. Definitely.
So when I look at your timeline, and then we got a reorganization meeting, and there's a little bit of lag there. to some extent, unless you appoint this committee again at the reorganization meeting. But I think the ag and natural resources fit into the farmland preservation plan, given the content that's in there and how broad it is with the topics and maps. And then the forestry, obviously the forestry plan. I mean, my thought is, for this committee and your staff is start to just take from those things,
Right.
because those are updated and should be more current than what was in the comp plan from 10 years ago. So like the farmland preservation plan, we tweaked a few things in there versus 10 years ago. So that content is real current.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, definitely use as much current information as you have and any plans or documents that you have. And then where any chapters are lacking in any recommendations or policy or anything like that, then that's where maybe where you're creating additional or looking at your 2016 chapters to pull from that, update it and include it. But remember, the comprehensive plan it's a 10-year horizon, 20-year horizon, technically. You're required every 10 years to have to go in and update it, but there's nothing saying that May of 2027, you identify that you missed something in the plan and you want to update it and include something. So it's not a static, put it on the shelf plan for 10 years. You come back and say, hey, we need to update it because statutes tell us so. It's a working document that could be updated at any point in time to add relevant information.
Yeah, I think making this a standing committee gets at that to use it, because I think at least me on the county board never looked at it since I've been elected for 2 terms. Hadn't looked at it prior to being on this committee and start to work on that. So I think that will help to go there. But to Pat's point, about the farmland preservation and the forestry plan, is Emily and your staff going to go through and kind of update the goals and objectives based off those plans, or is that something we should do?
I haven't looked at the goals and objectives of the farmland plan, and I can talk to Emily when I get back tomorrow or on
Okay.
Friday. But either we can just pull them all in its entirety, and then you all can kind of parse out what you don't think is relevant. I don't know what wouldn't be relevant, but if it's simply taking the recommendation that Mr. Kinney identified as saying, let's just pull them in there for now as a draft, we just have to clip out the Microsoft Word doc, put them in there, and then we're good to go for that portion of it. So we can do that very easily.
and that is what I would recommend, because because the comp plan sections are so much shorter than those full plans. So you pull in what you just said in that way. It's got, again, as an individual or a couple of people, I don't think I or a couple of people should cut something that's in plans that are approved by a much bigger group that more fully address those topics than the comp plan is going to. So pull them in, and then for grant purposes, you want everything in there, so it's in there. And if anything, let's throw in the proverbial kitchen sink so that if a grant opportunity comes up, you can say it's in there. So there's no harm in having more in there than you need. It would only be taken out things that you say, okay, we've done that, so, but otherwise, everything else is stayed and then we've updated, so.
We'll do that.
Yeah, I'm fine with the goals and objectives in both plans, and if someone thinks there's something to add, I think that's fine too, but I think they're good as they are.
That's good.
Yeah.
Can I speak?
Go ahead, Charlie.
I guess, are you coming back, Pat? Are you gonna stay on this committee?
No, I was on 5 committees this past year, plus I did farmland preservation. I was way too busy, and I'm committed to getting back to a normal number of committees.
Okay, so you're
Yeah.
not gonna be on this one?
Well,
As of now?
I'm not staying on 5, so it's something's.
Okay. Well, I just
There's at
wanted-
least 2 that are gonna give.
We'll put it this way. If Pat's not on this committee, I'm going to resign from the whole board.
What I wanted to say was, if Pat, I would be happy to take his section, because I'm done with mine, and ag and forestry, natural resources, I like anyway. But I have I had a different thought about it. The FPP deals specifically with farmland preservation and nothing else, and I thought that I would approach the ag section of the comp plan to address everything, the other concerns, of which there are many. And then refer anything that comes up in that about farmland preservation, just make a reference to the farmland preservation plan. if that is a direction the group would like me to take, and I don't know how you feel about it, Pat, but that's how I would approach it. And the forestry plan, we have a separate one of those, right? And that addresses all of the forestry issues, right? Not this, so that could be just we could just reference that in here. And I could do my own research and see if I thought the forestry plan missed anything or not. And then I could just, if I did find anything, I could approach the forestry committee and they could update their plan. If the group finds this reasonable, that's how I'll do it. And if you don't mind me grabbing that section, then we talk all the time, so I can run it by you at your leisure. And you don't have to be on the committee.
Well, yeah, if Charlie's gonna pick up Pat's slack, then,
Well, it's a
but
big.
George, you got
big
something to
shoes
say.
fill.
I just had a question about the proposal, whether the forestry plan is a long-term plan or not. Is it the 1-year plan, 3-year
It's a
plan?
10-year plan.
I like the idea of what you're talking about, Charlie, but I think what would be easier is to go ahead and let's combine everything, pull it, and then we can weed out what we don't need.
Just do an agricultural big dump
Do the dump now,
Okay.
because there might be some stuff in there that is pertinent
to the farmland preservation.
or to the comp plan from the farmland preservation that we do want in the comp plan.
Oh, I see.
And so
Okay.
dump everything in there now, and then we can, it's probably easier to pull than to add,
Okay.
is what I'm thinking. It's
Well, when
easier
we
to
were
get rid of
doing-
something than it is to add something.
When we were doing the farmland preservation plan, we actually went to the comp plan at the beginning and took some things that we deduped the comp plan compared to the farmland preservation plan. So that took some stuff out of the comp plan because it was in the farmland preservation plan. If I remember that meeting correctly, which there's a 50-50 chance I do or don't.
As long as we're bringing in the ag and natural resources related plans, another one that might have a lot of similar overlapping is the pre-disaster mitigation plan that has just been finalized. Emily ran that update. And Laura Negro shared with me when my group of extreme weather work groups were meeting on transportation that there's a county transportation plan. I never heard of it either, but
Say that
a
again,
copy of
Lisa?
it.
What did, say that again?
Laura Negro, was on the transportation work group
Mhm.
that I had to talk about how extreme weather would be affecting these
Okay.
elements. And she brought to my attention a transportation plan.
Transportation plan,
Mm.
if the weather goes down.
No, it was just a county transportation plan. It
There
was
hasn't been
something,
one
that-
since I've been here, and Charlie, you were on the board before that. And Gary, you were on highway. I mean,
Well, we have
I'll
a
find the
segment on
copy and send it
transportation
to you.
in- Oh, you mean a separate plan?
Yeah.
Independent of the comp plan, like the farmland preservation. Yeah, I don't recall.
I'll find it. It was a few months.
There,
ago.
there is such a plan. But it's not, I wouldn't define it as a county transportation plan. Every 5 years, the state of Wisconsin requires all of the counties to develop it used to be called the Human Services Public Transportation Plan. So it's really a coordinated plan between the transit providers, like BART and like some of the social service providers that looks at how can they coordinate and develop greater transportation services and coordination. So it might be related to that plan,
Sounds
not a
like-
plan like the highway department would
I bet you
develop
Bart
a
has it.
plan. Yeah, I've got copies. We do them internally for every single county, so I can forward the respective entity or person a copy of that plan because I've got it in our files. So,
That sounds like what Tom Wavy and Pat Douse were working on.
yep, I worked with them over the last 20
Okay.
years when they were here.
They got them, they
Yep.
umbrellaed all these different outfits that provided a cab for a
You good?
particular
All right, I'll send it to you.
person.
Well, I'm glad you were here, Sheldon, to verify that I'm not making that up.
Charlie, in regards to what you said, farmland preservation plan, okay, farmland central there, but because of all the overlays and maps and erosion issues and that stuff.
Yeah.
It really covers natural resources in broadly too. So you've got the farmland and the impacts of farming on the environment and natural resources, but then you've got the rest of the land is largely forest. So between the
Yeah.
two, they pretty much literally, no pun intended here, cover the county,
Agreed.
other than Lake Superior, which is no small part of the county either.
And we don't have a water portion of any.
I know, Mr. Chair, I've taken a lot of your time already for your short meeting that you were hoping to have maybe, but I like the idea of just dropping everything in and then you can kind of pull it out rather than not know what you missed that are in those documents. Easier to take it out than put it in. So we'll have our crew start to drop that, all that into the sections where appropriate, or however they're formatting that. And then anything else that you think needs to be added to, that's where, you know, obviously you want to look at that too as well, for that part of it.
I think that's good. That will actually help shorten the agenda later because we can kind of wait on those. That those part of C's there is those are going to get thrown there, part of
Okay.
C. So appreciate that, Sheldon.
Yeah, and I thank you for allowing me to spend a half hour of time just conversing as it relates to where we are and where we're going to be so that we can make sure we meet the grant deadline and we don't have any hiccups, you know, further down the line. So. Okay.
All right, the next part of the community survey outreach, I think Lissa had
Thanks, Sheldon.
Yeah, thanks.
some
Yeah, thanks, Sheldon.
wanted to reiterate the timeline of the outreach that we have done so far, and this was through December 2025 through January 2026. We kind of briefly talked on this on the March 3rd meeting, but we had audio issues for people calling in remotely, so go ahead.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care.
Yeah, thanks. I wanted to make sure that everybody kind of paid attention intentionally to what is being done. And then some of the things I'm recognizing as shortfalls and are not serving the county well. The first 2 pages in your packet under timeline of outreach is a really fast turnaround from having it announced that the survey was ready and the deadline. So I think you can see from the date here that I was told on December 17th that the survey's ready. So we got to work on it right away. And the survey was due on January 31st with the whole weeks of vacation in there for everybody to not pay attention to the survey. So it was very difficult to get this out and in front of people really quickly. I wanted you to see all of the efforts that were made to send it to diverse audiences, because this is not just one press release and that's it. I worked really hard to send it to target audiences like local elected officials and asked them to share it. Went out to libraries. The handout that is in your packet was copied and sent in envelopes to all the libraries in the county. Multiple churches, went to chambers of commerce to get businesses involved, as well as all of the local papers and Bad River in multiple ways. So I thought the response rate was really abysmal, to tell you the truth. But for one problem I'm running into in outreach is that we have no budget, as far as I've ever been told. We don't have a budget to promote this. So we have to rely on just one carrier of all of your messages. But we have to rely on free things that may not always be right in front of people's faces. And the number one comment I'm getting when I post things on Facebook is that all of your meetings are during the day and people can't get to them. And they're in Ashland. So the southern part of the county, I directly hear on Facebook, you know, we're not driving up there to a meeting. So I'm just trying to find what the issues are that the public's not engaged, and see is how we could all come up with some ideas on how to get more people involved in the process. For whoever is representing Glidden, if they're here today, Glidden, the newspaper, there's a pretty new owner at the Glidden Enterprise. I send them news releases at least once or twice a month, and they love this planning thing. So you can see it's on the front page with the QR code to register. They were really happy to promote that. So the 2 local papers are actively engaged in getting the word out. I also want to point out some of our partners. I sent it to every elected official in the county, and the mayor of Ashland and the mayor or the city clerk of Ashland shared the information with their council members, announced it at council meetings, and posted our flyer on the county website or the city website. So that's pretty cool that some of your neighboring municipalities are supporting your work. I don't know if you want to then go into part two, which was just sort of the communication plan, B, discussion of public participation plan.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. I'll just say that I think what we did, yes, we had a very low response, but what we did was we got it out there, and we can't force people to take the time to actually do a survey, but I think we did a good job of getting it out there with the means that were available. So. Pat.
I hate to say this, but I didn't do the survey, neither did my wife. I was gonna do it when I ran across a survey from somewhere other than the county communications directly to me. And I was just gonna see if she ran across it somewhere and said something about it.
Your way.
Yeah. And so we're not on social media. We don't get the daily press. And I read this document and it seems like, man, did you plaster the place? I don't understand why neither one of us remember seeing it outside of my communications for being a board member. I'm just gonna, wait until I ran across it. But that's maybe just the way we live and what we are see and don't see. And I don't know what the answer is, but the low response rate doesn't surprise me because it's not like we're hermits. And I don't know what else you can do, but you really hit it. And somehow.
So I know it was out there because I also did not take it. But that's just because I don't usually do surveys anyway. Unless I have a really bad feeling and I want to get it across in the survey. So.
You're giving feedback.
Right. And I get my own feedback. So I didn't take the survey, but I know I had staff that ran across it, various methods, and they took it. So there's people that I know that work for me that actually took it. And that's good because they're the younger people anyway, so if we get in younger people's thoughts, I think that's a good thing. And we're missing all the old ones, maybe that's not too bad.
But it does make me wonder, and it's kind of the point of that, it does make me wonder with such a small response rate, if it isn't disproportionately represented by people that work for Ashland County, if it was sent out to employees, and maybe, we disproportionately have Ashland County employees. So it makes me wonder how representative this is of the community as a whole.
Again, that's a state employee that didn't get it sent from me.
No, but I mean,
but so
if the county employees, because we have
Oh.
so few responses, if half the county employees did it, it really skews it towards perspective from county employees versus the population as a whole. I'm just curious. I don't know the answer to that, but it just makes me wonder, given.
I think what was in the demographics is I don't think it would have skewed towards county employees based off the little bit of demographics that were in that last meeting that we looked at. I wouldn't think that's the case.
I think really truly the holiday timing, I don't know that people were really had their heads up that this was, started right around the holidays.
Yeah.
I think that I saw a lot of Facebook sharing, so I posted on about 12 different Facebook pages like Madeline Island Community Posting Board and Ashland, blah, blah, blah. And then I can watch it get shared. So
Yeah.
I see the Facebook outlet is really robust. But my concern, as we all know, our demographics were 40% over 65 already, as far as Laura Negro's last estimate that she gave to me. And those are not the people who are on social media or I'll go to a website, see what the county's doing. So last fall, Eric and I went down to lunches at southern part of the county with a short survey. And we sat with people at lunch and walked through the survey with them and talked to them. And then Laura Negro allowed me to put the short survey in a self-addressed stamp envelope to go out to the Meals on Wheels, 135 Meals on Wheels recipient. And so I had said somewhere in my update on outreach that I've sent in the last month was the tally of what those people wanted, trying to use these electronic ways to really talk to people. And I think I'm going to continue doing that for other projects because our seniors are going to be the ones who need the most services, really. So I personally want to make sure we get their input, the vulnerable populations. And
So, according to the demographics chapter that's in, on the elements, it's only about 25% that are 65 and older, not 40%.
well, I'll double check with
So,
Laura. I know.
But again, that's something we should double check on the county demographics.
This is Liz Franek. I never did the survey either. Half the time the internet wasn't working when I got home from work, so I never had an opportunity to do it. I think the best place to put a survey would be just on in a paper envelope at the Super One. Everybody always looks at our meeting notices, our bulletin board we have there, our newspapers. Now we have the newsletter for aging. So everybody always looks in that corner. That would be the best place to have a survey.
Yep. So, just for the sake of time, we've already talked about the survey. We decided as a committee that we were going to take the results, use them accordingly, knowing that it was low participation rate. Rather, because we talked about whether we should extend it or repost it, we just said this is good, and I think we're doing that. A point to think about is maybe we need to have a committee meeting down county someplace that to maybe try to get some public participation, and maybe we think about having later in the day. But I know with Northwest Regional Planning coming up in their commutes, it's not great for them to commute. It's not great for anybody to commute, especially people that live on the island, part of our county that has ferry limitations to get back home at night. So we'll have to play into that to decide, but it's something to think about. The one good thing is we do have remote entry now that this is back again, and can really encourage the public to participate through remote meets. So just if we can, we'll go ahead and go to B on there and talk about the public participation plan.
Yeah, and thanks. This is a little bit different than what is formally called Ashland County Comprehensive Public Participation Plan. I wanted to go deeper than that plan, and we all allowed me to say, can I add other things that are not on your public participation plan, which is later in your packet? And you all said yes. So this in the green chart is UW Extension's efforts to try different ways that we find effective or we're trying. So I want you to take a look at that. One of them on this first page that you're looking at here is like a letter to the editor from somebody, probably you, Brad, if you want, that says, we're in the middle of this process. It's important. Come to our meeting dates. Here's our website. That's a very active page of a newspaper. Be pretty easy to write. I'd be happy to help if anybody wanted, but you know, directly saying to people, this is going on and we could use your help. It's essential that we get your input, really. A second thing that I wanted to just point out was Ashland, as you all probably know, Ashland County now has its own Wisconsin Towns Association chapter. Right now it's meeting every 3 months. They're thinking they'll meet every 2 months, usually in the Morris Town Hall. They've met twice so far, but trying to work directly with the WTA people, the representatives who are coming, to encourage them to tell their constituents about this. We've got a couple more months here with really important meetings coming up, and we should be working with those local folks to say, we'd like to include this on your future agendas. I mentioned in here that I'm trying to work with churches. Churches are really coming out as a big voice in the community. They're sort of reorganizing. So if anybody has a church that they go to or one in your community that's especially active or the minister might be interested, please let me know. It's a lot of work to hunt them all down and find their email addresses. And then the only thing that is disappointing to me, and I think to a lot of you personally, is that I really don't have ways to engage young people. This isn't like their first go-to topic, planning, right over their heads.
What age group young people?
I would say high school kids are the closest to understanding it. But one way that we've come up with after talking to a couple of people, including Carolyn down in the admin office, is to have a photo challenge. We've listed it a couple of times on this worksheet. And I kind of want you to say, yes, go ahead and do that. It's free. We'll put out information to say, take a picture of your favorite place in the county. It could be an event, a location. It could be related to a school or an adult. Send us the picture. It's not going to be a contest. We want every subscriber to be a winner, so to speak. These photos will be used in the comp plan in the future. And if there are ones that are not picked for the comp plan itself, they'd be going on social media with the person's name and where they came from and what the picture represents. So we're trying to find that. We're thinking, well, that might be a fun thing for kids to do, but we're opening up to the whole community. But because it's sort of a new idea, you haven't talked about it before, I just want you to, I don't know if you have to do a formal vote, but as part of outreach efforts, it's something I'd like to propose and know that you think it's something we should try.
Go ahead, Pat.
You said place, but maybe add to it, or, things to do too, because, the lake might be the place you like, but if you like, fishing or canoeing or whatever, things or place or activities, kind of what do you like to do and where?
Yeah,
So
I
it's-
mean, I always think that roly-poly contest in the city of Mellon, where everybody comes out and they bring their best recipe for something, would be a fun picture. It's a cultural thing and, how we integrate into our community. So places and events.
And then we'd give them a survey, or what would the?
Their
umbrella-
prize would be, their picture would be, like, this is from Ed Monroe. So their prize would be, we're gonna put your picture, I think you just had the plan up there.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
Uh,
So that would be the prize. There's no judging, everybody's winning. Unless it's terrible,
Microphone, please.
your mic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in seeing 4-H pick up a little bit more in civics education for the young people. And this would be a good little participation in the comp plan would be a good civics lesson.
Yeah. And Dave said he'd be happy to promote it through 4-H, so that's a good idea.
So to tag on to that, beautiful idea. And also Dave could talk to Kate, and maybe Kate could get it into the school, I don't know, what are the seniors, or what does the high school have for civics? That they could be apprised of the comprehensive plan, and maybe they could do an educational piece on it. Yeah, right. Well, whoever school board could be engaged,
Yeah.
and that would be an opportunity
Yeah.
for them.
I like it.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks. That's it.
Thank you, Lisa.
Any other? Sorry, I didn't have, any other, comments on the public participation plan? Do you think we're implementing that, George? Newsletter?
Yeah, so I volunteer to do a quarterly kind of newsletter, but that goes on our website for one thing. And I just got a few copies printed up, and they go at like National Family Restaurant and Quick Trip and here at the courthouse and the library. And every member of the county board gets copies of that to take back to their district. So I'm just looking at what's gonna come out this quarter for that. And I thought maybe, boiling down the content that, Sheldon gave to us here, the summary, might be a good kind of thing to highlight so that the public has a sense of what our timeline is. I don't know if anybody has a comment on that, but I thought I might take that approach this time.
Not sure if we're the Schwamigan family restaurant or if we're still a family restaurant. They never changed the sign, but people can still make their checks out to the Ashland family, but it's Schwamigan family.
I'm just old school.
So thanks. I took only 20 minutes and Sheldon took 35, so I'm glad that I was less than that.
No, your agenda topic was huge long. No, but I think ultimately, I think we're meeting the public participation plan. I do like the ideas. I will try to draft something up for a letter to the editor, maybe run it by a few of you. No promises, but I'm gonna try to find some time. If Erica was willing to like write the draft and put my name on it, that's fine. I don't know how much I want my name because my other job associated with county board as well,
What do you
because,
wanna see in-
Well, tell you what, why don't I have Erica write it and we can put my name on it?
okay,
Cause that's, and then you could,
or Gary's name.
or Gary's name, whatever, we'll send copies to both of you and to approve.
That would be wonderful if Eric would take that, because I do think that's a good idea. Send that and get some and really highlight that there's other ways to participate than coming to just the meetings. There's the website with all the materials. They can read it. They can send emails to the generic email address still working. They can send the email, their comments to that email address. We'll get that and incorporate them.
I got a snail mail one.
Yeah, they can mail it in, whatever they want to do. Written comments are going to be just as much as coming to this meeting. And maybe even more because we have the written copy and not just whatever notes we might have taken during the meeting. So, yes, I think we'll get that out. Meetings that they can attend virtually, they can watch the recordings, send comments in, however they want to do it. It's all out there. Try to get as much in there. And I think we'll meet that and take some of those steps that were in the other idea here. So
Do we put out what are, just if we could isolate the just the vision we have? And then give that to the people with with a request for their consideration so they can look at it, know what we already have and what we're trying, maybe they have some ideas. I don't know if that would be a good prompt or not.
yeah,
But
something along at least what we're talking about in C here, good segue. This is the information that we want the public out is these vision, goals, and objectives for each of these elements. That's where we really need the comments. I know it says elements, and the actual background information, the elements, we don't need as many comments on that as
Right.
what we need on this. And
yeah,
so
I was thinking more of that itemized vision statement, the broad one.
broad stuff. Yep,
The
I
big
agree.
one.
Get that
Yeah.
out. And
But I don't know if that'll change anything. Well, it's one in a row. Thank you.
I don't like, I'm gonna start bringing in a computer. So I really don't like these.
I agree.
My
My fingers are way too fat.
So anyway, Dan, can you go ahead? Can you actually, instead of the what's in the packet, can you go to the SharePoint site where we had Word documents from here? Because that's what I'm trying to get on mine, because I put comments on the Word document and the SharePoint as opposed to writing them down or anything. It's just in the Word document. And when I pull it up, the table's all shifted off and half off the table, so I can't see if I had made any comments there or not. Okay. Oh, you can't go through the website? That's how I got to it, is through the website. Cause I did it on a real computer so that I could,
Has there been any daily press article
really,
about our what we're doing with the comprehensive plan, our timeline, who they can reach out to, each one of us, which degree that we have the elements of the comp plan, which one they can reach out to. Because I've sent emails, I don't get any response. I talk to people in public and tell them give me a call, and they don't. And they know I'm busy, so I don't know if that's why, or people are just really busy. And I think the best engagement for my people is to have them come to a meeting, or watch our meeting online, or participate that way.
Elizabeth, I know that Erica sent a press release at the beginning of this, and then also when the survey was out in January. So I think that's where we were. She did get some positive feedback from one of the reporters that they'd like to do a story, but I don't think I've seen anything personally.
I think we need to reach out to them and tell them we need that to go out, because this is very important. I mean, look at what's happening in our society right now. People are going to be dealing with Enbridge, and they're dealing with immigration and everything. So we need to know what people see for our future of our Ashland County that's positive.
so I'll go based off of memory on the document. George, thanks for the paper document of yours. That is helpful.
Like I said,
Um,
I'm old school.
But housing was first, and so if you want to just bring up, and yeah, the what's in the packet, and scroll down to the second page, because the first page is pretty much the same all around, even the first part of that. The goal of housing was to provide a variety of housing choices that promote affordable and quality housing for all county residents. I feel that that's still a good goal. I didn't think that we needed to address anything like that. The objectives that are listed, I think, are still relevant. I did put a question on D and the objectives. Can we add an action step that talks about this energy efficiency and renewable energy programs that we can promote with the housing authority to do this with 16% of the people that own their own homes yet are still cost burden. That means just based off of electric bills and taxes and all that stuff are paying more than 30% of what there are. The people that own their own home from the element side is kind of concerning that there's 16%. And so one way of doing that is energy efficiency and renewable. The housing authority does a lot of furnace weatherization program, has the weatherization program that does that energy efficiency. So putting an action step in there about that. And that would help to get to that burden of affordability.
Which is, the county does run the light heat program.
And see, and that's the other thing is I don't think those action steps are in there. So I think,
Right. And there's also just referring people to focus on energy so they can get energy efficient light bulbs and weatherization and.
I
And
think,
so-
is that, it's a fabulous point. It's really important. Is that an action? I'm in the housing in the packet, right?
right, yeah.
1, 2, 3. The third action step, would that be something that would include what you're hoping to see? Or you want to more detail?
It could, but I think and maybe that was what the goal was of the last one was, but that was I don't know, on incentives, whereas there's areas where weatherization can be income based and not incentive. It can be done for basically free. And so my goal was at the next housing authority meeting is to talk to them to really get, and that's happening in an hour, and I'm not going to be able to be at both places at once. So it's not going to happen this month, but that's where my head was thinking, if that's everybody else kind of agrees with that. And then on E, so yes, we could say that falls under 3, the third action step there. I agree. E, I feel that we can get rid of everything after options. So it's just increase availability of quality housing options, period, is our objective. We don't have to worry about for low income, elderly, homeless, physically and psychologically impaired, because I think we need housing for everybody up here. And so I don't think we need to highlight those specific people, if everybody's all right with just deleting that segment.
You
It
wanna
comes
get
up
rid
a
of it?
lot.
I'm
Like
sorry.
it seems like that comes up a lot as a target housing group, but does that mean if it's not in there, the county's not going to do it? Of course not. So you could eliminate it.
Yeah,
and-
that's,
Do you feel it's been accomplished or it's being addressed adequately or?
no, I don't think, I think that it's still read and increase availability of quality housing options. I think the 150 unit that's being built right now is gonna help,
Yeah,
but I don't think yeah. No,
It's like what, 1,200, 1,500 a month, 1,500 a month?
yeah.
that's
Well-
that's a market based. Yep. Right, right.
Right. I would argue that any development is going to lead to help across the board because it will trickle down. It'll get people out of cheaper places because they want to live in a nicer place. And so I think it will trickle down to help those cost burden because the amount of cost burden people in the state or in the county was high, but then I had asked Emily in the Elements to add that statewide, and we're pretty close to statewide. We're a little bit higher, but we're still pretty close to statewide average numbers on cost burden too, which is 30% of your income going to housing cost. And is then its cost burden, and it's and so I think having more units get that all together. Go ahead, Dan.
I just want everybody to bear in mind while we're looking at this issue, as a county, we have very limited ability to affect it. You know, as far as new housing goes in the city, we have no influence on that. That's all the city. So if they don't want to put more affordable housing up, it's not going to happen. And no matter what we want or what we say, the same thing goes with the city of Mellon. I mean, we have very limited resources because these are all much more local issues and
We
we
don't
have,
have leverage.
yeah, the city has all the leverage. I mean,
What are you proposing to do with that?
So,
E. What is it?
Just for E, like what's funny on mine, it's red. On this one, it's yellow. It could be yellow, I guess. It doesn't matter. But I'm proposing just say after options, just get rid of the ones that we're looking for options for. We're just increase the availability of quality housing options, period. That's for everybody.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying.
But just looking up the list at B, does that sort of encompass E, or could they be blended to say one thing?
oh, yeah, good point, Lisa.
And that's true too. We could just get rid of E and blend it into B as in the range of affordable housing types and prices in order to meet the needs of the residents. And
Change
that's
that
the
to
quality.
yellow
So I think we can get rid of E completely.
and make B a yellow diamond.
I think that, well, we're working on it, but right now it's not there. I mean, I
Okay.
try to hire people to move into the area
Mhm.
and they say, I look for housing, I can't find housing. the
Yeah,
whole area.
That's been for a long time. too.
And so they turn down jobs because they
Yeah.
can't find a place to live. And that's why I say housing general
Leave it
needs to be
red.
there. Go ahead, George.
Yeah,
Pat
I
has-
question why we're even doing this green, yellow, red thing. Doesn't seem necessary at all. Got an objective, it's looking to the future. It's got a time horizon and it has a priority. I also object to the rating of priorities that was done, I think it was practical in this plan. But these asterisks, whether it was one committee member like that or two committee, that's meaningless to the average person. So I think the way that the put together has to be thought about a little bit more.
I agree. I don't think we need the key objectives of what's going on. Let's just get rid of them. They're still objectives. Let's get rid of that whole section. So hopefully that,
It's only delineating the trouble we're having meeting.
right.
So it lets you know, okay, so them two reds, those need way more work achieving than the yellows or the green.
But I would argue that with a standing committee, as that standing committee can say, here's our annual kind of summary of where we need to focus time each time on the plan. Or biannual is, here's the key objectives. Here's what we could put up, annual kind of where we stand each year instead of 10 years from now where you look back and say, well, we're still red on this. We didn't do anything. So why was it red to begin with?
So how would you delineate between them at all?
No.
Would you just do it, okay.
You're already delineating priority with your asterisk. Whether I would just rate it, I in my draft, did priority as first level, moderate, or subordinate. I mean, you don't need this color coding and a priority both.
Right. Well, but not every objective has an action step.
Brad, I would argue people learn and read things in different ways.
Oh, okay.
And that, was it Maslow's hierarchy, whatever it's called? But people learn and read in things different ways. So some people are going to look at this and see the red and yellow, and that clicks in their head more than anything else. So
We'll do plaid. I'm just curious, I think Gary and Charlie, were you on this? It seemed like you, so I'm just curious if you have any recollections of the reasoning for why you had both the hierarchy and the delineation with the asterisks. It's 10 years ago, so if you,
Yeah,
it's hard to
it was-
remember, I totally get it.
It was strictly to let people know what, I mean, we had them as a goal, but like Dan says, sometimes you have no leverage. We would like this to happen, but unless somebody helps us, we can't do anything with this. And agreeing, saying, okay, that's part of the plan goals that we're doing all right on. So someone could look in here and if they pulled out all the reds, if they parsed this somewhere and pulled on reds, notwithstanding George's good point, if they pulled all the reds, they would see exactly what the county's difficulties are. And I would write a letter to the state senate with those reds and say, help. You made us write this plan, help. But that doesn't have to be distinguished that way. I think somehow that should be represented in here, but it doesn't have to be with colors because George makes a good point. That's all my opinion.
Are you gonna
Yeah,
speak?
sorry, Pat.
Are you gonna speak?
No, sorry.
So Maslow's got this hierarchy of needs. I think you're referring to learning styles. So from a learning style perspective, the more ways you can represent something, it's going to connect differently with different people. But when you try to represent things in more ways, you can get into the minutia of what does this mean? And, because here we have what I would look at as a spectrum for the objectives from the most important to least. And I look at it as a spectrum that a group put together at one point in time, but I think of it as a spectrum, which I believe it is, but then it's also going to be dynamic as things change. So it gives me some sense of what a group of people at one point in time rated as far as what was more important for priority than others. So I actually think that they're helpful because it gives me a little more insight in terms of how a group, not a person, but a group rated them relative to each other at one point in time. But I don't take it so serious that I've got to do the red before I could do any yellow, because it's going to come down to time and resources. And then the suggestion of taking out E and just keeping B, I was thinking the same thing. But I would want to take the word quality from E of quality housing options and put it into B, quality affordable housing options. Because I think we all know there's a lot of really inexpensive housing in Ashland, but it's just nothing you want to live in. So we want quality affordable.
All right, so I think we got that, where we're gonna eliminate E, but add quality affordable housing to B. We'll keep the colors, even though George doesn't like the colors.
When I first looked at this document 3 years ago, I found it exceedingly opaque and very not user-friendly at all. And that was just because the first time I've ever seen it. It's a good reference document, but I found it very confusing, and I think we ought to make an effort to make our new plan as user-friendly as we can, building off of this good base. But I think we ought to acknowledge that we probably can improve on making it easy for people to read.
No offense, but
I agree.
uncovered at dusk, because I was in a town hall the other night in another community, and I asked them about their comp plan. They didn't know where it was. After a few minutes, they found it, blew the dust off it. That's their town plan. And I said, has anybody on this board looked at that since it was done? And everybody had this blank stare in their eye. And I can't comprehend why they spent time and effort, and even their boards never looked at it. It's like, it's done, forget about it. But anyways,
Yeah, like a chore to be accomplished and not a tool to be used for their advantage,
yeah,
right?
Prime example, I stopped in at our town hall and picked up our comp plan this morning. Laying on the counter for the public, it has never been touched in 2 years. Nobody is interested. The pages are all brand new.
No dog ears
Well,
anywhere.
In terms of outreach, there's all kinds of ways that we can really make this fun and applicable and in front of people's eyes, and we can talk about those. Pat and I were talking yesterday about some ideas. We can talk about them later, but after all this work that the county's putting into it, in my tenure, there's no way in heck it's gonna sit in somebody's shelves for the next 10 years. I mean, I will make sure personally it gets out in front of people, but we have to just prioritize that as a need, like we did this work to direct the county's future for 10 years. It's important. How do we keep bringing it up? And we could talk about ways to do that, but I've got some examples for you about how to make it more user friendly that I can share with you, and we could take a look later.
hey, Brad.
Yep.
And I apologize, but I didn't know that Northwest was gonna take up the time, but I have to leave in a few minutes for another appointment, but I'm doing the same thing kind of that you did already. I'm sending tonight, Emily, these notes that I have on here for both of my elements, just to tell her, and I put on the thing, some of the items in the current plan should stay. There's things that we discussed 10 years ago that we either still need to do, didn't do, should be doing. But these are things that I got from everybody that I contacted and myself of items that, I think could be part of it, but I want Emily to look at them and say, yeah, I've already covered that and it's here, or it isn't covered and we need to, talk about these things. And then I also made a note on here, what we talked earlier about, inviting like GIS zoning. I got land conservation and forestry to talk about like land use. And say, hey, did we miss anything on like my one item of land use? Did we miss something that, isn't on our list from before today, the new stuff? And so, I'll do the same thing kind of that you did, to get them down so she has them, she can look at them, come back to me and say, I'm already covering that here, or it isn't. And because like I say, in the existing plan, there's things that basically we haven't done, or they still are meaningful. We, like in the economic stuff, I'll just take a second. You know, we talk about jobs and things.
Or are you on the element side or the goal and vision goals and objectives?
Kind of like the goals.
Okay.
I mean, you know, basically economic development is working together and maintain a strong economy kind of thing. But some of the things on there, you know, we have maintained desirable jobs that everybody likes that, create a skilled and an educated workforce, and we have to figure out how we do that. Align resources and identify potential partners. Intergovernment cooperation should continue to be sought out. Provide a strong image to businesses and people outside of our county. Identify our workforce and what employers need. That's kind of covered already, but we still need to do that because employers are telling me, A, they can't get the people they need with the training they require. And they have a sense that young people don't want to work. And I mean, that's what employers are telling me. And so we maybe need to go back to the young people and say, what's your problem? There's jobs. Why don't you have one? Or what are you looking for? And it's not this all day, unfortunately.
Sure. The tech school, they have a plan. Yeah, I can't remember. The tech school, forget if it's a 3-year or 5-year plan, but they go to all the businesses in the community and ask, what do you need for training, et cetera. They do that really hard and heavy and regularly, because it's part of what they do as a tech school. They really cover that. I don't think we could come close to duplicating that. And they do it partly because they need to know what employers are looking for, so they know what programs to keep and what to drop and what to change. They hit that hard. So I don't know that we need to even begin to duplicate that. So we could shorten that one, I think.
Yeah, Gary, also, I mean, I know the Ashland School District also offers all sorts of training for workforce training. I mean, a kid right now can get his welding certificate before they graduate. So, I mean, they are teaching all these skills that employers say they want in the high schools.
That's fine. So so some of these things will change over time, and I shorten the most of these up from the one I'll send to Emily. But I said, identify what educational institutions are available, provide our major employers and identify their needs, provide local businesses a market analysis, identify our residents across all economic categories and their locations, provide the type of civic organization that we have, identify roles and responsibility of each organization, provide tourism I've got this misspelled, provide tourism of our county as it is a big asset. And continue to use our county forests as for our residents to see the assets of our timber products and revenue it provides, but encourage the county to look at public access to the property in forms such as camping and hunting opportunities. Continue to provide quality workforce to stay competitive, retain and expand existing businesses and attract new employers. Encourage transportation, including keeping up our roads, bridges, bike trails, walking paths, snowmobile and 4-wheeler trails, and promote our resources such as parks, camping facilities, waterfalls, and our natural beauty, including the lakes in Chequamegon Bay. And one thing I really want to emphasize, and I know George has been a pusher of this, is we need to figure out how to develop some parks in this county. We don't have enough. I mean, we have Copper Falls, but so this is just my headers.
Oh, okay, so you're saying like all these objectives, that's kind of what you want to just scrap the objectives and put those in there, or?
Not all of them.
Okay,
And that's what I want to talk to Emily about when I send this to her and say, look, there's stuff up there that's still legit that we, like I said, we even haven't accomplished or still need to accomplish. Because things, I mean, it's just like when you talk about housing, that's 20 years from now, that's probably still going to be an issue.
right.
So we don't want to throw everything away. I just want to do these and say, here's some points. this is where I think they'll fit. And if they don't fit, do we need to create, and expand on what we have? And then we'll put them in order of however we want to do that. So, like I say, I'll send this to Emily tonight. I'd asked all the departments too, and some of them sent me stuff, and yesterday I sent them another email. I'm sure they're saying, why is Gary sending me another email? But I wanted to remind them that if they had any new ideas or something to let me know. So, and then on land use, it's a little shorter of my things where they'll fit in and where they won't. And I said again, some of our items in our current plan are still valuable, but I have maintained a strong economy, healthy environment, and enjoyable quality of life all depend on the land. Using education of the public on land use through education and open communications. Some of this too is in some of our other areas, like maintain maps that provide current and future land use. You'll see that in different parts of our plan. Maintain productive areas, including forest and farmland. We talked earlier today about creating a future land use map. Explore conservation easements, which is really new to some areas, but in like Rhinelander area, that's become a big thing where people are giving conservation easements. Continue to monitor plan implementation, discourage growth. Now, this could be a little touchy. Discourage growth in natural areas like wetlands, floodplains, and streams. I think we kind of cover that in the areas, but it's very important to some people, according to what I was hearing. And I'm not saying I don't agree with it, and then again, I said too, to invite some of those departments.
I think on that one, instead of the discourage use, I think use best management practices in developing near water bodies or something like that. Cause we shouldn't, best management practices, you're not going to fill a wetland in. You're not going to build within 66 feet of a tributary.
Yeah.
You're not going to log within 66 feet of a stream water body. And so I rather than the negative,
Right.
use the positive. And I think but I agree that probably is there. One thing I had on the land use is the goal actually uses the word hamlets. Do we actually use that term? I've never heard that. And that's in the goal. And I said, do we use that term of hamlets? Can we just strike that word? Of just is cities and townships is what we call them, right? Villages okay. So it's city, villages, and townships.
It's almost like an East Coast thing.
Yeah.
Well, traditionally, there were groupings of houses around a crossroads, or it's kind of like a Swedish settlement or a Danish settlement. They weren't villages, they weren't towns, they were in effect hamlets.
But we don't use that term in Ashland County, right? And yet it's in our plan. Charlie, Gary, that we're part of that. How'd that goal become hamlets? What's that?
I have a hamlet.
I just know that there's a crossroads over by Bivens Swamp in Bayfield County that says population 2. Has a sign, has a name.
I'm a moving hamlet, mobile hamlet.
So, yeah, I think that's good. If you like, I didn't send any notes. When the notes I sent were based off of the web page that I'm going to forget Northwest Regional Planning has, where they have the background elements. I sent some notes on making that clear to Emily. But I think we could send our notes to her but the ones I've been working off that are up on here are from our SharePoint and not from Emily's SharePoint. So I think we got to work with Carisha to get the notes to her to update these so that we have access to these, and working with Emily to get that done. Because this is the big step that Emily wanted us to get done in her not being here, is work on this vision, goals, and objectives type without her. But yeah, I think that will be good from this meeting. Hopefully we get all these kind of updated. We can all look at them again. I spent a little bit of time looking at everybody's, but I primarily I didn't look at all of them. I mean, I made comments on some of them on the SharePoint. But then we have the use, but the problem is getting to the SharePoint is, I was trying to show Dan how to do it, and I have it bookmarked, and that's the only way I can get back to it.
Well, what I'll do is, I'll get the link and I'll stick it in a Word document and then put it on the everyone drive here, and then I can access it easily.
Yeah. Well, it's on a Word drive. It's in Word on SharePoint.
Yeah, I
So,
know,
yeah,
but if
yeah.
I can
Oh.
save it in a separate
Yeah,
document
right.
on a server a drive that everybody can access, so I can, in the courthouse.
But so I'm glad that you kind of scrapped everything, Gary, it sounds like, and I know you gotta go. Kind of scrapped everything and kind of listed what you want. Any of the action items or anything that you want to leave or that was in there, any of those that are up there, or are you gonna just kind of get us your notes on that? Okay. Yeah, yeah. No, it's good. So yeah, if we pass those notes, get them, and where we get this updated, I think maybe we have at our next meeting, we put it in the packet. We don't necessarily have to spend much time, but we all take the initiative to kind of read through and make sure that at least at right now, these are still living documents that you can change still, but that we're all in agreement moving forward and just kind of have it. And if they're in the packet, that means the public can still look at those packets too. So I think get them updated. We'll get them in the packet the next time. So yes, Gary, go. Oh, I'm going to let Gary go though. Or you got, okay. What?
Saying, I don't think the public has access to SharePoint though, right?
No, but the meeting packet they do. And so like these are in the meeting packet. It's a public document. And so
Oh, yeah, but we've put stuff in there. It's called the bottom line, right? Is it the one you're thinking, the bottom line?
yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's because it's free. And it does a really good job.
Yeah, and the Glidden Enterprise is newly owned. The announcements. Yeah, I have a email list of all the county board members. Yep. Yep, there's another one. I call it municipalities, yeah.
Awesome. Gary, thanks. Get those notes that you have to Carisha and we can get those in updated on that.
What's
You
going
should have seen me speeding here to get here from Bayfield. I shouldn't say that on the microphone. They might. I never went over 62 unless I was passing somebody.
I'd also have to catch a carpool at 4.
Yeah, we'll try to keep this. The goal is for an hour and a half long meetings because that's what Emily prefers when she's here. So that's going to always be the goal. But if we can kind of power through, uh, so let's go to transportation. Paul, do you have?
So I have to depart by 4:15 to make the last vote.
Yep, we're gonna leave at 4. We're
Oh,
gonna,
okay.
we're gonna end at 20 minutes, no matter
Okay.
what. So that's,
So I think the biggest issue with people is as far as the comprehensive plan goes, and myself included, everybody has a limited attention span, so simple is just better. And because of the time constraints we're faced with, maybe less visionary and just more practical, and that's how I'm approaching this. And I looked at the goal and objectives here, and you know, the goal makes sense. This objective address the issue of heavy loads on county and town roads with objectives of supporting farms, logging, and other businesses while also protecting the roadways. Well, first of all, there's load limits in the winter time, so to me, this was just a little bit weird unless we build the roads up to runway standards at international airports of 3 and 4 feet thick. I mean, so that it made no sense. So I lost my train of thought and I just went to the draft. And I made some notes on, you know, what I thought was missing from the draft on transportation, much like maybe what Gary did, but first of all, I think we should, with the draft, and incorporate some survey information, which is not listed, level of satisfaction with transportation infrastructure, somewhat too extremely satisfied in a percentage format, like paved roads, trail networks, pedestrian gravel roads, bike, transient docks and boat launches, you know, and or anything that was on the survey pertaining to that. And then additionally, another table showing the existing road system in miles and percentage of those roads in the county, state roads, county roads, local, village and town roads, and then other park and forest roads. And then another table, people love tables and graphs, accidents in Ashland County, a table showing the number of crashes, the number of injuries, the number of fatalities, and you know, the totals at the bottom of that. And one thing that was missed in here, and Sheldon had brought up, or actually you did, about there's something in the county about a county transportation plan, and he's gonna share that with me. But while Ashland County has adequate gasoline and diesel refueling locations, you know, the public electric charging stations could use a boost. And I see there's a couple new ones on Main Street. They're covered. They haven't opened.
Those are old ones
Are
that
they?
now can't be used
Right,
Oh.
because of the new law.
state statutes,
State statute doesn't allow public entities to have,
well, to sell it. You
to
can
sell
have-
it. Yeah, so it's either
For
free
ourselves.
or.
I think most of the people with electric cars are using them for commute and they just plug them in at home, so it
Right.
works okay, but.
But, well, I live right there and the number of people that come up, park there and try to figure out how to get under the cover
Oh.
because of their local trying
Well,
to
might
find
be-
it.
It might be free electricity under the cover.
Right. And it was, when they were able to use them, it was not like common that there was cars parked there overnight using it. And I thought we had something with the county was a grant at some point that we were supposed to get them all up and down 13. And I
Right,
wondered about
and-
that.
And we never got the grant.
Quick Trip has 4 of them, and I asked the gal in there if they were used much, and she said hardly ever
Really?
at the Quick Trip, but you have to pay for those.
Well, I hear there's one at the hospital that people go pay or use for free because you don't have to pay at the hospital.
Right. So-
But what happened to the county ones?
The current administration got rid of the entire department at the EPA that was giving out that grant. So,
But I can share these thoughts with Emily as far, if you want to go through the rest of these objectives, you know, I mean, I agree with George, red, yellow, and green, you know, some of this stuff made no sense. some of it sticks out. I mean, take B, for instance, acknowledge and anticipate potential impacts from climate change. The county's already addressed that with, you know, culvert repair, but there might be more. And there is a section on that in this rough draft on transportation that I'm sure will be enhanced as time goes on here.
You got something, Pat?
Yeah, you know, on the first one, something that comes to my mind, I get what you're saying about the first one, but what comes to my mind on that one is every now and then I head down to Hayward and whatever, and I meet lots of logging trucks. I'm astounded how fast some of those logging trucks are going. And the damage to the road is related to how fast the trucks are going, because the faster they're going, they go up and down, they do more damage. So one way we could protect those roads some is just by having the sheriff, you know, enforce the speed limit more. I mean, one time a semi, I was going 65 almost heading north, and a log truck blew past me like I was standing still.
And it's overweight trucks too.
And, but
if
the
it's a-
overweight's the
If
word.
it's a county road, that's
Right.
a state police.
So, you know, the first one, the biggest thing I can think of is enforcing the speed limit a bit, especially maybe during breakup season. I wanted to ask you about G, maintaining the natural beauty of the county roadways and scenic views. So every time you go down the road, especially spring and fall, where you can see the buckthorn, I look at the buckthorn so much that my wife tells me to keep my eyes on the road, and it just keeps spreading. So when you see buckthorn spreading, do you think that impacts the scenic beauty?
Absolutely.
So-
the town of LaPointe spends a lot of money on buckthorn removal every year.
So I've talked to Mary Jo a bit about that, but it's a bit beyond the scope of what they can deal with. Highway, maybe we can work at getting more funding from the state. And I know when you cut it though, it's going to sprout and branches. You also need an herbicide control where there's a power line. You know, they cut that typically every 10 years. So maybe we coordinate with the highway, the power line, whoever brushes the power line, you know, because they got some responsibility. But yeah, the buckthorn to me is really ugly too, because it's just an avenue to spread further into woods. So
It kind of all hinges back to C, which is funding.
yeah,
And,
so I don't know if you want to tag in the control buckthorn on that one, but
Yeah, and you know, the natural beauty, scenic roadways, I mean, something as simple as, you know, instead of galvanized guardrail that you're driving against, there is guardrail that's, you know, a little more aesthetic to look at.
So one thing I've noticed in all these plans, at least with the action steps, there are things we've already done that we need to be taken out.
Right.
You know, like if I go back to the,
Well, the economic development one has hire grant writer is
Right,
the
but
first
I was-
one.
I was
It's
gonna-
just take that, get rid of that.
I was gonna point that out. Yeah, it's already been done. And every one of these action steps has something that's already been done in every one of these.
Right, but just because some of it's being done or it has been done, doesn't mean it's still not an action step too, though. It is what I felt like some of the stuff, yeah, we're doing it. But it's still something we should continue to do, and I think it still deserves being a plan, but hire a grant writer, we do not need to do, and that can go.
Yes.
There are certain things.
Well, there are certain things. And when we get to the next one, there's another thing I want to bring up.
Oh,
I'm just saying, we're working on the plan, we're not working on the report card.
I agree, and that's why I was fine saying, let's take away the stoplight colors and not worry about it. I'm sure you hate when the stoplights are on the side then, and you don't know which direction it's going. But, yeah, I think that's something we can come back to on how we want, if we want those colors, how we want to list the priorities on all these and be consistent. I think I agree that asterisk doesn't mean anything on the priority. I think high, medium, low, or whatever. I was looking, yours was first level, moderate, and subordinate priority. however we want to do that, I think we can get it priorities. Want to go in?
Well, one way that would help, I would inform this is looking at the survey results. And if, there's different ways that things have been categorized in that. In the senior surveys, they have identified very clearly what they're looking for, so that we could assume or at least try to say the top three. Maybe there's the top three goals in each chapter based on public input.
Right.
Might be a good question to ask the public at meetings is here are our 10 goals in this chapter. Let's rank them. Give us your top three. You put sticky dots on and you come up with your top three. Simple way to engage the public in prioritization.
Pat, you got something?
Well, Bayfield County a few years back did a survey. Because I got land there, I did the survey. They asked essentially, are you willing to pay more for roads to keep them up? And a strong positive response for charging more taxes for roads. The way that helps during budget season is, you can plan on putting more in for roads because by golly, the public has told you they support that. So when asking questions like that, it really helps as far as direction in budget season to where it goes and how much. It's really useful information.
So in the issue of time, because we have people that need to leave at 4, you'd be out by 4:15 to catch the ferry. We're gonna go ahead and wrap it up, but what I would request is that George, thank you for doing this. If you can make sure, well, Dan, if you can make sure,
Emily has it, Carisha has it.
okay,
It's just
yep.
that I brought a hard copy because it was late to be gotten into the package.
Yep.
So,
It-
well,
it's already-
And so if you have any notes, comments that you put on the vision, objectives and goals page that were in the packet, if you can get those to Carisha so she can adjust and update, because in April, what we're going to have is we're going to be able to come back to these. And so get those notes and hopefully then they get updated. They're all there. We can kind of look at them before and maybe go quickly through kind of saying, yep, we're good with this. We have what it's envisioning and that sort of thing. On the agriculture and forestry side, we're going to wait a little bit because Northwest Regional Planning is going to dump in the other goals sets in there. So we'll have a new version of that in that sort of stuff. Pat,
But
go
the
ahead.
one thing we should add on the forestry, as George and I have talked about and Dan's mentioned and Gary, we really are lacking in parks and trails, connecting those parks and trails and the different, snowmobile, UTV and, other ways of connecting those things. It's one of the reasons Bayfield County has more tourism. They have more lakes, but they also have invested into parks quite heavily and we haven't. And so, if that becomes a priority for the county, then we need to budget for it and plan for it. And then on the Maxwell property, George and I attended the Town of Kelly meeting here a few weeks ago. That board supported applying for the Knowles Nelson stewardship money. And then a few weeks before that, the town board of White River also supported that. So those are both very good, but it gives us an opportunity to work on some park and trail there on the Maxwell property as we get closer to acquiring that.
so, George, for you to update for your next one, if you type in Bede, Wisconsin into Google, you'll get the Wisconsin, the PSC. Broadband's already being done. There's $1 billion in federal funding coming to Wisconsin to actually do that all around the county. So if you want to look at this website, you can actually see the awards and where they're actually putting in different kinds of broadband. So just so you can update your thing. But if you just Google Bede WI, that's all I did. You see Bede WI, and it's the first hit. But it says right here, $1,055 million. This- So it's gonna be a broad variety of sources. Some will be fiber, some will be satellite, but some fixed wireless. But that's it. We'll give you everything.
Go ahead, George.
I'd like to offer a motion to adjourn.
I would like to, I would like to set the next meeting, even though there's gonna be an election before, if we can hold off on that motion to adjourn.
I didn't hear a second yet.
Yeah, I didn't hear a second. But I appreciate that, George. So our meeting, the whatever you call it, the first one is the 21st. The coordination or whatever reorganization. Thank you. Reorganization is the 21st. Assuming most of us are still going to be on there. Obviously, some people will definitely be on there.
Yeah, well, Gary does. Gary does the appointment, but I'll prepare it to vote at reorg.
So, but because it happens on that, we can't meet before the 21st unless we want to squeeze another one in.
We can. This committee is valid until the 21st.
Okay. Do we want to meet before the 21st? I think it might be a good idea to meet before the 21st. When's election day?
The
The
7th.
7th? But we're still the committee members until the 21st, even.
Well,
but-
but canvassing is gonna be
Oh.
the following week. So Heather's gonna need this room.
For the whole week.
Well, for a few days at least. You know, they have to do the canvas 1 week after the election.
1 week. Well, can we meet the week of
We can be,
that first week of April, the first full week? So 2 weeks from now, basically,
probably, yeah.
like something like on the 8th. Instead of the week after, since canvassing will need it for the week after.
Heather's gonna be getting ballots here on the 8th.
On the 8th?
Yeah, the day after the election, local clerks come up here and
And
deliver all the ballots
to here. So we can't really be in this room
on the 8th.
on the 8th. So could we do could
We could do the,
the 20th, like from the 15th to the on is going to be much tougher for me to commit. But if we could do like the 14th is canvassing. What could we do with this?
she's gonna be here for 2 or 3 days.
Do you think we could be the 16th, that Thursday?
We can pencil it in and I'll make sure that.
Would that work for everybody? The 16th of April? Does that work? Okay. Yeah. I can't do much earlier. You saw. Yeah. Okay. Well, the other option I heard thrown out there was the 20th, but I'll have a hard time committing on the 20th right now. We could do it, but somebody else might have to run it. All right, 16th. So let's just go to the 16th. That works. We'll go with the 16th. Or does Friday work better for you? Okay. Is Liz still on, or
Yeah, I'm still here.
does the 16th work okay for you?
That'll be good to give enough notice. Thank you.
Okay. So April 16th, 2 p.m.
Well, I'll have to make the motion again now, so I move to adjourn.
Motion by George, second by Charlie, meeting adjourned.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.